And on the 8th day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer.
Howdy folks, Darren back with you here at Cross Timbers Farm. Welcome to 8th Day Chronicles. Beautiful day here on the farm. It's a busy day. If you farm, there's no such thing as a slow day. Maybe unless it's 0 degrees and blowing snow or pouring rain. Then there's always things to do inside, but outside around a farm there's always something going on. And today we're going to be putting up a gate. Several months ago, when we brought dairy goats back to the farm, and we started slowly, very carefully hand-picking certain bloodlines and certain animals for our foundation stock for our dairy herd of goats. When we brought a few back to the farm to get started, one of the first things that we noticed in our front pasture was the goats just within a couple of days was raising havoc on our chicken coops. And we sort of knew that prior to some meat goat breeds we had here before, that they were prone to rubbing and jumping on the chicken coops and things, but not near as much as these goats we have now. They were just like those chicken coops. And the goats are like metal shavings to a magnet to those chicken coops. And they were just wreaking havoc on them. So we seen we had to do something, and to keep our chicken coops from just being destroyed, these goats jumping on them and just chewing on them and tearing them. So we fenced off the area around the coops to keep the goats out of that area. And it's only a small area that we needed to fence off. But when we fenced it off, we needed a gate to get through because we didn't want them in the area where we go into our feed room and hay room and things of that nature also. So we put up a temporary fence. Well, the actual fence is going to be there permanently, but it can be moved. It's just T-posts and some little step-in posts for just, they're not really for strength, they're just to keep the wires at a good separation. But then we put in a temporary gate that we can go through to get into our hay room and our feed room. And what I did, just temporary, was put up a wooden framed with 2x4 wiring on it panel that I had built, that we normally use for our laying hen dibs, our chicks, that when they're in the brooder and they get big enough to come out of that brooder some, that we put these panels around the brooder and make them in an area where they can come out into to get outside. And we can move them and things of that nature. That's kind of why we built those. But we needed a temporary gate to put up, so I used one of those panels, and it was supposed to be temporary, and it's been there for a month and a half. So we decided it was time to get rid of that, because it's a hassle to go through, and we're in and out of that gate multiple times a day, and it's just not built to be opening and closing a lot. It's work temporary, but it's time to take it down and put up a permanent gate. And a few days ago we went and bought a gate, a tubular gate, and a gate latch, and we're going to be putting that up today. We got to move some fence and things of that nature to make this gate fit. So we'll take you along with that today here on the farm. This is very needful for us to do, and I'll show you what we got up temporary. Okay, here's where our fence that goes around our chicken coop area comes off of our high tensile fence, and you can see we have used splice crimps and run a wire around the post, and it comes out. And right now it's only 3 strands, and we found that's enough to keep them out of there for now. When we have little kids, we may have to run 1 more strand. But as you can see, we used coming off the main brace post here. It's braced with 2 wooden posts, and it comes off down. And we use some of these little fiberglass step-in posts just for support for the distance between them. But it comes right down to some T-posts. And I've had some people ask me that's visited the farm about our insulators. And these insulators, how they wrap all the way around the post, they're not like a claw. And these came from Ken Cove Farm Supplies. We really like them. They just slide down over the top of the T-post, and they're very secure. So we come down to our fence, and it just comes along the 8 or 9 feet from the chicken coop runs, and it's getting real close time of day to let the chickens out to free range. Hey Lana, what you doing, pretty girl? And it comes around, and you can see we have a brace here for this corner post, and it comes right around. And here's the temporary gate that we put up. As you can see, it's just a panel, a wooden panel with some 2x4 wire on it that we usually use just for our chicken brooder to put around it for the dibs to get out. And it comes right on around, and the fence went right on up through there and connects. Now, this little temporary gate, we had a problem when we first put it up, the goats climbing on it, and our adult goats could just about get over it, because that's only about a 3.5 foot gate, maybe 4. And they could climb on it real easy. So to prevent them from climbing on it, we run a hot wire, just temporary, off the top and across the top of the gate. And then we ran another one down low just to keep them, it's about knee high, just to keep them from climbing on it. That goes over to another insulator and ties into the post. So we're going to be taking this gate down and installing. As you can see right there, we have a brand new 8-foot farm gate that we're going to be installing right here. Okay, now we're on the inside of this gate where our feed room and hay storage room is. And the fence comes right on up right here, and we have a corner brace here. And to go into the chicken run, we just have the 3 wires here run over and connected to the other wire back here just by insulated gate handles. And while this worked fine for a temporary solution, it is a pain every time we have to go through here to feed chickens, let chickens out to free range during the day, to fill waters. It is just a headache, and it was never meant to be permanent. So we're taking this down today. We're going to have to take down this section of fence out through here, and we're going to square our gate up right here with the corner of the building of the barn, straight across to right in here. We're going to put a cedar, I think it's a 6x6. It could be a 5x5. It was a custom sawn log on a portable mill that my brother-in-law did, and he gave me. We're going to mount the gate to that, and then we'll take down this section of fence. We're going to have to move this section with a brace down to the point where it joins the post for the gate. And here's the gate we bought. And as you can see, I have already installed 2x4 wire on it. When you have goats, and especially kid goats, when they're small, these farm gates like this, without wire on them, kid goats can go right through it. So we have to install wire on the gates up to about 4 foot. This is 4 foot wire to keep the kids from being able to go through. And when you're installing a gate for cattle or horses, you don't have to worry about it being close to the ground. But when you're installing a gate for goats, you have to be really careful about kid goats going under it. And if you don't install it pretty low to the ground, kid goats will go right under it, which could put them in a situation where you don't want them to be. So, and separated from their mama and things of that nature. So you have to put gates, farm gates for goats, really low to the ground, just a couple inches off the ground. So we're going to get started first, taking down some of this fence. First thing we're going to do is take down these temporary wires here with our temporary gate handles. And yes, I do have rubber boots on, which will insulate me from the ground. But I turned the fence charger off. You wouldn't see me grabbing these wires like that, and especially with a pair of pliers in my hand. Well, they're rubber handled too for protection, but still, I wouldn't be grabbing it if this fence charger was on. Those Parmac Solar Pack 12s or Magnum 12s are good chargers. So we're going to go ahead and cut this wire right here to get this section down. And I'm going to go ahead and take this top one off, and we're going to keep these and the wire attached to them. You can see they've been crimped to the handle. Good sturdy, secure crimp. Around a farm, you can never have too much stuff laying around, so we'll use these somewhere else eventually, I'm sure. So we're going to go ahead and take that one down, and we're going to cut this wire right near the crimp that we crimped it to the wire to start with, right there, and just give it a cut. Okay, that one's loose. All right, and we're just going to repeat this process 3 times down this until we get this gate loose. Also, around a farm, here's a tip for you. If you don't have a really good set of what we call linesman's pliers, these are probably 30 years old. They were given to me by my dad, and who was an electrician, and these are the best things in the world. They got side cutters on them and the pliers, and they're very heavy duty. When you go to buy a set of linesman pliers to keep around a farm, don't skimp on them. This is one thing that you don't want to buy the cheap Chinese made ones. You want to go ahead and buy the best pair that you can possibly afford. They're worth every penny. Okay, we've got out our old bumper jack, and a little bit of a tip. If you farm and you use fences and you use a lot of T-posts, you know how it goes. You end up 2 or 3 years later, your plans change, or you get different animals, or you need to adjust fences, whatever the case may be. It's real easy if these are out somewhere very accessible and you can get your tractor in here. You just hook a chain to your bucket, hook a chain around the T-post, get it tied around it down toward the bottom or somewhere in the middle, and just hook it to your bucket and just lift and pull the T-post right out of the ground. However, if you're in a tight quarters area somewhere that you really can't get your tractor into, like we are here, or you're only going to be pulling 1 or 2 T-posts, and you really don't want to fire up the tractor and get it all out of your barn or your shed, the time involved, a good tip is go to a junkyard or somewhere, and a lot of the old 70s and 80s cars and trucks had bumper jacks, and find you an old bumper jack. The bumper jack works perfect for pulling these things out of the ground. You just hook your chain around it. And old bumper jacks could be dangerous with old cars. A lot of people got hurt really bad with old cars pulling them out of the ground with a bumper jack or changing tires. with a bumper jack. So just be careful and just wait till this thing grabs hold and just jack it right out of the ground. Look at that. This thing's coming right out of the ground. If you're in soft ground or something like that, just get you a big wide board and lay under the foot of your bumper jack to give it more space so it don't sink in the ground as bad. The ground here is pretty firm, so I'm not really having to worry about it. But okay, we have our bumper jack hooked to our T-post via a small section of chain. We pull the chain real tight around the T-post and put a bolt through it with 2 washers and a nut, so the chain grabs on these tabs on the T-post. Then we have the chain wrapped around our bumper jack with a bolt through it, and we're just going to jack this T-post right out of the ground. And bear in mind, if you're using a bumper jack, to stay back a little bit from these things in case something gives, the chain slides, nothing pinches your fingers, keep your hands kind of out of the way, things of that nature. But usually I keep my hand up on top of the jack post for leverage, and as you can see, every click I make on this jack, that T-post is coming right out of the ground. Okay, our section of fence here is down. We used our old bumper jack to pull these T-posts out of the ground. And now we are ready to operate the backhoe. We've done some pre-measuring for our gate, and we know where our post needs to go. And we're gonna fire up the auger. You can see it standing there. And get our hole dug for our post that our gate will mount to. A fellow related a story to me one time. Some new hires on a construction crew. It's their first day on the job, and they all showed up at the construction site, and they were breaking ground, and the dozers were all parked there, and the backhoes and things of that nature. They were leveling the ground, the big footers, and 4 or 5 of these new hires standing there waiting for their morning instructions, and their foreman approached them and welcomed them to the job site. And today was going to be a day to see what they knew, to know their skills, to see who would be placed where. And the foreman said, "Gentlemen, welcome to the job site. The first thing we're going to do today, we got some dirt to move. Who here is experienced and knows how to run a backhoe?" And bear in mind, these new employees had saw shovels and hoes and hand tools laying around, and saw guys out on the job site already working using those tools, and they're thinking in their mind, I'm going to be being the low guy on the totem pole. I'm going to be out there doing manual labor with my back all day. But here's our foreman asking us who knows how to run a backhoe. This is my chance to get to sit in a seat all day and just push levers, which is a hard job, don't get me wrong, but a lot easier than manually running a backhoe or a shovel. So the guy's thinking, you know, I can sit in a backhoe all day in the air-conditioned cab and run a backhoe. So 2 or 3 of them raises their hand real fast saying, I can. And he points to the guy and says, okay, you're going to be the backhoe operator today. Who here knows how to drive a dump truck? And they see the dump truck sitting there, and they're thinking the same thing. They think, yeah, I'll be in an air-conditioned truck cab all day just driving. And so 2 or 3 of them raises their hands and says, I can drive a dump truck. I know how to drive a dump truck. So the foreman points and says, okay, you're going to be our dump truck driver today, and looks at the other gentleman and says, you're going to be our backhoe operator today. And they're giddy, you know, they're smiling, thinking, yes, I got a job in the air conditioning. And so he tells the rest of them, go see the foreman down here and he'll give you your assignments for today. You two come with me. And they walk over, and there is a shovel and a post hole digger and a wheelbarrow sitting there. And he says, okay, backhoe operator, here's your backhoe for the day, and points at the post hole diggers and the shovel, and looks at the other gentleman and says, here's your dump truck for the day, get to work, and points at the wheelbarrow. So long story short, you know, you're not going to get out of hard work. So hard work's good for you, you know, as long as you're able. It's good for you. It's good for the soul. Okay, we've done some pre-measuring, and right here's where our post needs to be. Last night before dark, me and Susan was out here, and we had the tape rule, and we done some measurements, and we've got a piece of rebar in the ground right here exactly where our hole needs to go. So that's our next step to start digging a hole. We're going to put the backhoe to work. All right. I could not tell you how many holes, post holes, on this farm over the years that me and Susan and our daughters have dug. It would probably be shocking. Well, we don't have a auger for our tractor. We could probably use one here. The ground is not real rocky, and it's not many roots, so it would probably benefit us. But really, we've had other needs with other equipment that would benefit us more than an auger for our tractor. So we've not went down that road. Right here's our tool and all. Okay, folks, we have our hole dug. Our hole is 32 inches deep, and we found around here on our farm that if we'll set our posts at around 30 to 34 inches, somewhere in that area, that it does really well with our soil. And we tamp our dirt in really hard, and we got a tamping rod that's an absolute workout to use that tamps this dirt in almost better than concrete. So we'll show you that in a few minutes. But our hole is dug, and it's 32 inches deep, and we have a flat rock. We went down to the creek and found a flat rock to go in the bottom of the hole. Okay, we also have our post here that we're going to be using. This is a 8-foot, and it's true 4x6 post. It's cedar, and we have treated the bottom with used motor oil. Okay, it's treated. This is the part that'll be going into the ground for a preservative. Cedar is pretty darn rot resistant anyway, and it's very insect resistant, so we probably won't treat the part above ground, but the part that goes in ground has been treated. Okay, we're about ready to set this post, and through years of setting posts and talking to a lot of the old timers and information that's been passed down through generations, we set our post a certain way. And some people may think this is really weird and it's really odd, and maybe it makes no sense, but realize that in today's society, most of us are not outside on the land in the outside environment, in the world that God created, nothing like our forefathers were. The folks of old, my grandfather and my great-great-grandfather, right on down the line, and I'm sure probably yours too, especially if you live in a rural community and your family comes from a rural community. Our great-grandfathers and grandfathers, they were outside all the time, from daylight till dark, basically every day. and they were clearing land, they were planting crops, they were planting gardens, they were raising livestock, they were building fences, they were building barns. They were outside in the environment 12, 14, 16, 18 hours a day. And these old timers that work these old farms, they have my utmost respect. And they were out in these environments and they paid attention to what was going on in the environment around them. They were paying attention to what was going on in the dirt. They were paying attention to what was going on when they were setting fence posts. They were paying attention when, and I see a big old coyote. Hang on just a moment. He's going away. Okay, the big coyote right in broad daylight here at the farm's seemed to be gone. Oakley was sound asleep. Of course, you don't usually see these critters around here in broad daylight. They're usually here at night. Our dogs patrol all night and usually sleep a lot during the day. And but Oakley finally seen it and started barking and growling and ran it away. So back to our setting fence post. Our forefathers, they worked the land and they paid attention to what was going on. They paid attention to the dirt and the moon phases, how it affected certain things, growing crops. And a lot of people nowadays might say, oh, that's witchcraft or a bunch of hogwash, and I don't believe so, and I do not believe it's witchcraft. I do not believe any of that stuff. I believe in the Creator above controls everything, and He made the earth, and the universe in certain ways where everything worked in harmony. Okay, the moon phases has a lot to do with setting a fence post. The moon phase controls a lot of things. It controls, you know, the gravitational pull on the earth, the magnetic fields, the tides. I'm sure we've all been at the coast where on a full moon and a tide, a high tide, how much more that tide comes in and how much heavier it comes in. Okay, the moon phase and the gravitational pull of the earth will affect fence posts. And I can already see some people scratching their head going, oh, he's full of it. I didn't believe it at first, but when we first started seriously farming and setting fence posts, I noticed that at certain times of the month when we set a fence post according to where the moon was, some of our fence posts would go in the ground and we would dig the dirt out and we'd put the post in the ground and you'd start to put the dirt back in and you wouldn't have enough dirt to go back in. You'd use every bit of it. Well, what about all that space that the fence post took up? Where did that dirt go? Then at other times we'd set a fence post, we'd put the post in the ground, put the dirt in, tamp it back in, and we'd have a ton of dirt left over. It's like we just set a fence post, 2 months ago, and we didn't have enough dirt to go back in the hole. I mean, it just barely was enough to level it back out. Now we've got too much dirt. What's going on? And studied these things, and I'm convinced after setting hundreds of fence posts that the gravitational pull of the earth according to the moon phases will determine if your post stays in the ground tight and stays there for a long time, or whether in 6 months it's loose and wobbling. Okay? Everything that I read and studied and heard talked about from the old timers, always set your fence posts on a waning moon, meaning the moon has been full and it's on its way down. That's when the gravitational pull of the earth, the magnetic fields, whatever you want to call it. I'm no astrologer and don't study that stuff, so very layman's terms. So if I'm getting some of these terms wrong, just bear with me. I think you'll get the gist of it. Excuse me. Set your fence post on a waning moon, which means the moon has been full and it's on its way down. The gravitational pull of the earth at that time will be at its strongest, and it will pull that post down into the ground tight. The dirt you tamp back in around it, it will pull it down in tight, and it will pack down in there tighter than at any other time. Okay? If you set your fence post on a waxing moon, meaning it's been the new moon and it's coming up. If you set your fence post then, when you put your post in the ground and tamp it as tight as you can tamp it, you'll probably have some dirt left over, and 3 or 4 months down the road, depending on the use, that fence post will never be tight in the ground. It'll have a little bit of wobble to it, or you can, even if it doesn't just wobble on its own, you can kind of grab it and shake it and it's not in the ground that tight. But if you set your fence post on a waning moon going down, that fence post will be in the ground as tight as it can be. Another trick that an old timer told me, and again, I use the term old timer that word is used in my vocabulary as having the utmost respect for those folks. They knew what they were doing, and the term old timer to me is a badge of honor. They earned that. They have my utmost respect. But an old timer told me, he said, son, when you're building fence post, before you drop your fence in the ground, get you a flat rock. Go to the creek and find you a good flat rock the size of your hole, and drop it in the bottom of your hole and set your fence post on top of it. It'll keep the grain of your wood. That's where most of the water will soak up in the moisture in the ground. It'll let your fence post sit on top of that to prevent as much moisture from going up in it, and it gives your post a solid foundation to sit on. So we went to the creek and found a nice flat rock about the size of our hole. We'll drop it down in the hole, then we'll set the post on top of it and level it. So I realize that people's work schedules nowadays and things like that you can't always set fence posts on a waning moon. I realize that. Matter of fact, today is not a waning moon phase, and I need to get this done. Sometimes you just have to set a fence post when you have time. But if you're doing a major project and setting a lot of fence posts, I would recommend waiting until a waning moon to do that. Like I said, today is a day that I needed to get this done. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. So, all right, let's get this post set. Hey folks, I've got this tamping rod here, and it is a steel rod, and I have no idea where this thing came from. My dad gave me this, and I kind of halfway wonder if it wasn't some sort of a hay spear rod or something at one time years and years ago. You can tell it's really old. It's pitted in a lot of places, but it has a big old knuckle. It's sharp. It's kind of rounded on one end, and it's got a big old knuckle like thing on one end. And this joker weighs at least 70 pounds. It's heavy. And you talk about a tamping rod. Take that rounded knuckle end and just pick it up and let it fall. It is amazing how tight this thing will tamp dirt into the ground. And I got my hole dug just a little bit off center, and I'm closer to the back of my hole than I am the front. And this knuckle on this one end just barely goes down in there. I mean, barely. And man, you talk about a tamping rod. And it is a workout. Using this thing, picking it up and dropping it. Your arms and shoulders and upper body, if you tamp in 7 or 8 fence posts or more in a day with this thing, and you're not used to it the next morning, you're gonna be sore. But I have never used anything to tamp with better than this. Okay, our post is set. As you can see, that sucker is in the ground, and it's in the ground good. And I don't know if you can notice, I'll pan the camera down, but we got quite a bit of dirt left over. And that is a result, in my opinion, of we set this post on a waxing moon instead of a waning moon. But really, I had no choice. I had to get something done. So you do what you got to do. So if I had a preference now, if I was setting 7, 8, 10, 20, 30, you know, a bunch of fence posts today, going down a row and digging them and setting them, I wouldn't do it today. I'd wait for a couple of weeks till we get into a waning moon. But sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. But anyway, our cedar post is in the ground, and all of our livestock dogs are on high alert. That big coyote in the field up here of the neighbors a few minutes ago, it went that way over the hill, and a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes later, I noticed Raven in the back pasture with her nose up in the air, winding, and started low growling and run to the back rotational grazing fence separating the pasture. She run back to that fence and pacing back and forth along that fence growling. So low growling and low barks. So she probably winded it. It probably went that way somewhere, but it's they're around. But anyway, our cedar fence post is set. Man, that's setting around good. That tamping rod just is something else, and my shoulders are already sore. Almost. But okay, next step, we got to hang our gate. Let's get our gate hung. Okay folks, we got the gate up. Time was kind of running away from me, and I didn't get to film every single bit of it, but anybody that's hung a farm gate knows about the lag bolts that goes into your post, and you put your hangers on them. One thing that we did, that we do to all of our main gates, and any gate that we go through several times a day, like we will be this one, is we put the gate latches, you can just sling them and they lock. And it took a little time to fabricate this, and I had to attach a board and then a spacer board there to get it out to the right distance for it to work good. And these little gate latches are worth their weight in gold. Man, I'm telling you, if it's a gate that I'm going to go through at least once a day, or maybe even once every other day, I mean, you know, if you've got some gates on your farm you only go through maybe once or twice a month, that's using a chain around a post is plenty fine, in my opinion. But if it's a gate you go through a couple of times a week to multiple times a day, these gate latches are worth their weight in gold. Every gate we have on our farm that we go through daily or even weekly, we have one of these on them. They're about $20 to $25 depending on where you buy it. Most farm supply stores carry them. And I think we bought this one for $22, and it comes with the part that goes on your tube gate and then a part you mount to whatever you want it to latch to. And they're worth their weight in gold. I wouldn't even consider buying a gate that I go through regularly without buying one of those. So as you can see, the gate is hung and swings open just perfectly all the way back, and then back to the latch. And once I take this temporary panel down, it'll open the other way as well. It'll open both ways, so very happy. All right, now we got to finish connecting our fence, our electric fence to it. And we got to drive in a couple of T-posts and get our brace posts, and we're almost there. Okay, we're done. The gate's finished. We got our cedar post in the ground, and it is stout in the ground. I'm happy with that. I hope because of the moon phase that later on it don't start loosening up, but if it does, we'll just get some more dirt and tamp it again. But anyway, you see the gate's up. It's an 8-foot gate, and we got our gate hardwire here on it to where it latches easily to come in and out. And we put wire on our gate to keep kids from coming through it when we have kids in the front. And we tied our fence in right here. The fence used to go all the way up, and now it comes right here. We moved our brace to here, and we had a little gap here that we just used some splices and our crimpers and crimps, and crimped and pulled some electrical wire over to these insulators we mounted on the back of the post to keep a goat from wanting to go through that gap. So our goats are pretty respectful of the fences, except for the does when they're in season. When it's time, I mean, and they're in standing heat, they'll lower their head and try to go through the fence like a running back going through the line, like John Riggins. But for the most part, any other time of the year, 364 days out of the year, the rest of the time, this fence is enough, and they respect it and stay away from it. So this will work just perfect. We got our insulators put and the wire pulled over to it, and they're crimped onto the hot wire, and we turned the fence back on and watched our meter to see if we had any grounding issues, and we don't. Everything's perfect. The meter's up where it's supposed to be, and the fence is good. So very happy with this. It really opened it up to where we can access the chicken coops and things of that nature a lot easier. So we're very happy with it, and the bracing went real well, and the post went real well. Everything's nice and plumb. The gates doesn't, when you open it, it doesn't start trying to swing to one side or the other because it's plumb and it's straight, and it's fantastic. We're happy with it. Thanks for being with us today here at Cross Timbers Farm for our hanging the gate and redoing our fence. That fence was temporary up through here, and it's my own fault. I guess I went fishing one too many days, but that temporary gate here and the fencing through here is only supposed to be here for a week or so, and it ended up being here for a month or two. So, but it's done now, and we're real happy with it. This gate's big enough to get our ATV and the trailer behind it through, to put mini round bales in our hay room and to bring feed in, and we can swing the gate open and everything will fit through just fine. So we're happy with that. We could even back the pickup truck in here if we need to, an 8-foot gate. It'd be real tight, but the bed of the pickup would back in here. So in any event, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it. If you haven't, we'd sure appreciate if you'd subscribe to our channel. God bless and have a good evening.